Some stays stay with you forever. Gift an experience to remember with a Hastings Hotels gift card. Buy online at hastingshotels.com.
Good evening, and welcome along to the final big show of the year here on NVTV. We've got some great guests coming up this evening, including country music star Nathan Carter, one of the most famous voices on TV, the voice of the X Factor. Peter Dickson will be here telling us all about his brand new book, Voiceover Man, and we'll have some great local music as well. And starting things off with his latest single, Emerald Isle, here is Conleth Kane.
On the soil of Ireland is the home of my mom and dad, a place they raise their children, a place their children left. You let us spread our wings, and we flew like queens and kings from your hands to foreign lands. One in Melbourne, one in Sydney, one in London, and one in San Francisco. We might be miles apart, but the Emerald Isle is always in our hearts. One in Melbourne, one in Sydney, one in London, and one in San Francisco. You'll never be alone, for the Emerald Isle will always be our home. On the coast of Ireland, the waves play like a band. On the seas which we flew over to our homes across the world, you let us spread our wings, and we flew like queens and kings to foreign lands with golden sands. One in Melbourne, one in Sydney, one in London, and one in San Francisco. We might be miles apart, but the Emerald Isle is always in our hearts. One in Melbourne, one in Sydney, one in London, and one in San Francisco. You'll never be alone, for the Emerald Isle will always be our home. On the grounds of Ireland, we will always proudly stand, and the memories we will cherish till the end of the road. You let us fly away, but we think of you each day, our mom and dad in Ireland. One in Melbourne, one in Sydney, one in London, and one in San Francisco. We might be miles apart,
current single there from Conleth Kane, that's called Emerald Isle. Now we'll be chatting to Nathan Carter in just a second after his latest single, which is called Wings to Fly.
I dreamed a dream that we both shared. Soon I could see how much you cared. Your faith in me, it never died. You gave me wings, the wings to fly. Now you are an angel flying high. You left us here on earth alone to cry. Memories of you will never die, for you gave me wings, the wings to fly. You're always there to lend a hand. You watched me grow from boy to man. But then I heard the sad, sad news. So hard to take, so hard to lose. Now you are an angel flying high. You left us here on earth alone to cry. Memories of you will never die, for you gave me wings, the wings. Picked up the phone again to see your smile, just to hear your voice. I hit that dial. Leave your name and number, and I'll come back to you. If those few words could just come true. 'Cause now you are an angel flying high. You left us here on earth alone to cry. But memories of you will never die, for you gave me wings to fly. Now you are an angel flying high. You left us here on earth alone to cry. But memories of you will never die, for you gave me wings, the wings to fly.
So that's the current single from Nathan Carter, that's called Wings to Fly, and I'm pleased to say that Nathan joins us now on the line. Nathan, how are you, sir?
Not too bad, yeah. Thanks for playing the new track. Appreciate it.
So it's a song that's been touching a lot of people. It's a very emotional song, and it's a song that you wrote about your best friend, Nicky James, isn't it?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Nicky, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year, very suddenly. And I kind of stopped singing and playing music for a while after he passed, and got persuaded to do a writing session one day, a songwriting session, and sat down, and we came up with that there, which is in memory of him. And obviously we've done a video for it and put it out there online, and I've never had as much feedback about a song, you know, people writing messages to me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and people just saying they could relate to the lyrics, and it meant so much to them that they'd obviously, you know, I wrote it for Nicky, but people obviously go through the universal thing of loss, you know, and people obviously relating to the lyrics a lot, which is really nice to hear, having written the song, you know.
And especially at this time of year, we do remember the people that we've lost, don't we?
Yeah, this year especially has been crazy for everyone, you know, in so many different ways. And Even in the music business alone, the amount of people that have passed away this year. The great Charlie Pride passed away there only 2 days ago and stuff, and we were on a cruise with him last year, and he was singing great, and he's just appeared on the CMA Awards in America and stuff, and just so many musicians and singers that I know of this year, unfortunately, that have passed away. Crazy.
And here in Northern Ireland, we lost the great Brian Call as well.
Indeed, yeah, and to be honest, it would have been a funeral I would have liked to have attended, but obviously just with the current situations, we can't. And so sad that someone of that stature that has been known and had such a long career. I know so many people in Northern Ireland and in the Republic that would have loved to have come to his funeral, to show their respects, but unfortunately just wasn't allowed,
So tell us about your friend Nicky James. He was somebody who was very instrumental in helping you at the start of your career, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was my mentor really since I was a kid. He was a fantastic singer himself and guitar player, and he used to bring me on stage whenever I was about 8 and 9 years old and get me to play my accordion and sing a couple of songs if he was playing locally, And then he encouraged me to record an album when I was 15 years old. So he took me to a recording studio and he paid for the album. And not a lot of people know it, but he was so good to me really just through my whole career. And then we stayed very close friends. And in January of this year, Nicky was divorced twice. He didn't have that much luck when it came to love, but he'd met a new partner this year, and we got to meet her in January. We went over he brought her over to Dundalk. We had a lovely meal, and then within 3 weeks of that meal, he passed away suddenly in his sleep. So it was just so sudden. I'd never really experienced, anyone that close to me dying so suddenly. So it was pretty tough to be dealing with, and then of course we all went into lockdown then after that, and the world changed since. But it's been a funny all year for everyone, and I suppose no more than myself. But we just have to adapt, don't we? And we change our way of doing things. Obviously I normally would have been on tour all year round, just traveling and gigging and music and meeting people, and instead it's been a year of trying to find other ways of staying busy and staying active.
So did you find it difficult being on your own during lockdown?
I did, yeah. I think like a good few people, I was probably eating too much junk, and the bottles of wine might have came out some nights, and then you'd be sitting there in bed till midday the next day. And in the end I had to focus on a project because I was just not used to having so much time on my hands, and you start overthinking everything, and especially when you're living on your own. So I started a building project here. I built a man cave in the garden, should we call it, and it's actually the size of a little cottage, but I'm kind of in the finishing. It's about 90% built and finished. So that's been a project for the last 3 months, which has been great, and it's kept me busy.
So what kind of things do you have in your man cave? Do you have a full-sized bar in there?
There is a full-sized bar, yes.
Oh, wow.
I'm afraid to say. It's actually, I'm going to use it for a recording. It's going to be a recording studio, but the problem is with the bar there mightn't be that much recording gets done, That's great. I got planning passed earlier this year and delighted with that, and it's, as I say, it's just been a great focus and something that hopefully I'll get to use, because I'm not going to be gigging by the look of for the foreseeable future. It's going to be much later on next year before we get to go on tour again or anything. So get down to doing some more recording and some practicing, to be honest. I'll definitely need a lot of practice after having so much time off this year.
Now, it must be a weird feeling for somebody who's been so used to being on stage nearly every night for the past 10 years. You must be missing being out there in front of an audience and getting that audience reaction. Yeah,
so weird to go from doing so much. Yeah, and the buzz of the gigs, the people, the atmosphere, the music, the lights, the whole thing is a huge drug, really, for anyone who's in the entertainment business. To go from doing it all the time to doing nothing, and it's not your choice. You just it's a brick wall up. There's no more of this happening. So it's a big adjustment, and I do feel for everyone in the business. And it's not just singers, it's promoters and venues and the venue staff and lighting technicians, sound technicians, truck drivers. The list is endless of people that make their living through the music business and the entertainment business. So I do hope it comes back next year, and when it does, hopefully people maybe take the vaccine and then things can start going back to some sort of normality, or some the way it was before all of this.
Now, your album, The Best of the First 10 Years, is out now. Can you believe it's been 10 years you've been on this journey? Because I remember interviewing you way back at the start of your career at a country music event in Letterkenny. And could you ever imagine back then that you would have went on to achieve so many things that you've done?
No, definitely not. It's been a roller coaster ride of 10 years. Played some amazing venues and been very lucky with the fans that have bought the music and bought tickets to come and travel and see us all over the place, and kind of this year I've been able to sit back and reflect, and especially when I was picking the tracks for this album, thinking back to my first single and songs I released through the years. Some of them I'm proud of, some of them I'm not so proud of, and it was great looking back. This album in particular, we put 20 tracks on it. But I didn't want to just do all old stuff. I wanted to record and write some brand new music. So I wrote this latest song for Nicky James called Wings to Fly. My single before that was called Sarah Jane. I co-wrote that. And then the one before that was with a band called The High Kings, a track called May the Road Rise. And I'd written that as well. So I stuck 4 brand new tracks on, and the rest were, as you say, what the title is, it's the best of the last 10 years, or the first 10 years. So a bit of a long-winded title, to be honest, but we couldn't think of anything else, so that's it just stuck.
Now, have you reached a stage where you're fed up singing Wagon Wheel yet?
If you had have asked me that this time last year, I would have been saying yes, but I'll gladly sing it any night. You want me to sing it right now? I'll be desperate to sing it again on stage. Yeah.
So what's your plans for Christmas this year?
Kind of a disappointing Christmas, really, I suppose, for everybody, I was meant to have a lot of the family here. We'd planned this a few months ago. I said, hopefully the restrictions will have eased and I can bring my nan and granddad over to the house, and my mum and dad and my sister and so forth. But unfortunately, with the way things are, that they're not. They don't fancy travelling, just airports and planes. And so myself and my brother Jake, we're actually going to go over to Liverpool for a couple of days, hopefully. That's the plan. And we'll get tested before we go and just make sure we're okay and so forth. But yeah, it's going to be a different sort of Christmas now for everyone, unfortunately. But listen, we just look on the bright side. At least as long as you've got the health to be able to do it and to be able to go forward, that's the main thing.
Now, did I read somewhere where you tried to fit an 18-foot Christmas tree into your house?
You did. Hang on, let me flip this around. Can I turn this around? I don't know if you can see that tree.
Wow.
It's you can't see the top of it, actually. It keeps going another 3 or 4 foot above there. But yeah, I did a programme for BBC NI called Keeping Our Country at Christmas. Myself and my brother hosted the show from my house, and we had a few special guests, Cleona Hagan and Lisa McHugh and Robert Mazzell, to name but a few. And the first opening sequence was me and Jake going to get a real Christmas tree, cut it down and bring it back to the house. But of course Jake wanted the biggest tree we could get, which there was actually bigger, but I definitely wouldn't have fitted the bigger ones through. So this one is 18 foot, and it took us over 2 hours to get it through the door. It arrived, we couldn't get it in, we couldn't fit it through the door. The door's only a standard size door, so it had to go back and get wrapped so it would make it smaller, and then we still took us an hour to get it in, get it up, and it was a whole handling. But anyway, it was good crack, and it made for a bit of good TV.
So looking ahead to next year, can you make plans for 2021?
Kind of. I mean, we cancelled, so we're not cancelled, but we rescheduled so many shows from this year to next year. And obviously we're keeping everything crossed that they're going to go ahead. So many people have bought tickets, and thankfully they held on to the tickets. They just said whenever it's going to happen, we'll come then, So we've shows scheduled all over England, Ireland, Scotland, America. So we rescheduled about 90 shows from this year to next year, you know. So we're hoping they're all happening really from March, April time onwards. That's when we've rescheduled them from. So we shall see.
And I know it's just been confirmed. You're going to be headlining a big music festival in England next year, aren't you?
Oh, in Blackpool, yeah, that's the first of its kind, I think. Myself and Lisa McHugh and a whole host of the British country music singers are doing a big festival there. And country has become very popular in the UK over the last few years. Obviously, we know in Ireland it's been very popular for a long time, but especially in the likes of BBC Radio 2 in mainland England has been playing a lot of country and the modern stuff, which I wouldn't necessarily be on the same genre, but was very honoured that they've asked me to headline this festival next year. So it's great to see some bookings are coming in. Anyway, that's one of the latest bookings we've had, and can't wait for it to happen.
Well, Nathan, it's been great talking to you as always. Have yourself a great Christmas, and sure, we'll catch up sometime in 2021. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Have a good Christmas. Take care of yourself.
I was playing some tunes up on Grafton Street on a grand old Dublin date, when she walked right up and she said hello, and I stopped to ask her name. Well, I saw her face for the first time. I knew right then I had to make her mine. Her lovely smile drove me insane, and I fell in love with Sarah Jane. Well, she pulled out the fiddle and she rousing up the bow, and she began to play. She jumped right in with the jigs and the reels and the shores of Botany Bay. When I heard her play for the first time, I knew right then I had to make her mine. Her lovely sound drove me insane, and I fell in love with Sarah Jane. Every now and then to the place on Grafton Street where we met that day and we fell in love, playing tunes in harmony. When I saw her face for the first time, I knew right then I had to make her mine. Her lovely smile drove me insane, and I fell in love with Sarah Jane.
Always good to have Nathan Carter on the show. Now, still to come this evening, we'll be chatting to Peter Dickson about his brand new book, Voiceover Man. But before that, some more great local music. And Justin McGurk is back with a great new single called You Are.
Open your eyes, what do you see? Is it darkness or light or in between? Open your mind, what do you think? Don't let your thoughts steal away your dreams. The sun is always shining down somewhere. Find the path that will take you there. You are a beautiful sight. You are a starry night. You are wings that fly. You are a song to sing. You are a symphony. You are the one who holds the key. If you believe you are, open your ears. What do you hear? Are you listening to the love or to the fear? Open your soul. What do you feel? The light in you is a light that heals. The sun is always shining down somewhere. Find the path that will take you there. You are a beautiful sight. You are a starry night. You are wings that fly. You are a song to sing. You are a symphony. You are the one who holds the key. If you believe you are. Your pain is hidden, you don't let it show. But trust yourself, 'cause in your heart you know. You are a beautiful sight. You are a starry night. You are wings to fly. You are a beautiful sight. You are a starry night. You are wings that fly. You are a song to sing. You are a symphony. You are the one who holds the key. If you believe you are, just believe you are. You know you are. A song to sing, a symphony. One who holds the key. Just believe you are.
Now, my next guest is somebody that you probably won't recognise his face, but you will know his voice. One of the most famous voices on TV. He's got a brand new book out called Voiceover Man, and I'm pleased to say Peter Dickson joins us now on the line. Peter, how are you, sir?
I'm very well indeed, Robin. Thank you very much for having me on.
So, Peter, after a career like yours of over 45 years, I suppose a book just had to happen. Was it a great process writing the book?
It was a great, well, it wasn't a great process. It was a tortuous and painful process because I'm not a naturally fast writer. And for many years, friends and family have been urging me to write my stories down because, you know, I've worked for 43 years in the entertainment world. And of course, by the very fact that I work in it, I come close to and work alongside many household names and on big household shows. So I've got a ton of anecdotes and stories that I've been telling friends for years and dining out on. And they've always said, "Oh, you should write these down in a book." And I said, "Yes, of course I should." I just couldn't find the time. And I did stop process over about 4 years. It was ridiculous. And when lockdown happened in March this year, and we were all locked away for God knows how long, I decided now or never. I sat down and I finished what I'd written already, polished it, and then wrote the remaining 6 or 7 chapters of the book, and then spent another 3-4 weeks just polishing it and going across it again. And finally got to the point where I thought I was going to publish. And then, of course, the publishing process is a whole new thing to me as well. So that was tortuous, and then finding the images to go along with every story. That was a lot of detailed research required for that. So at the end of the day, it's done now, and I think it's probably the most difficult thing I've ever done. But here it is in my studio now. I've got it here, and my son did the artwork for it, which I'm so pleased about. He's a graphic designer, and he's done a terrific job on not just the cover, but he's also done the interior of the book. Little things that are quite nice for people in radio to see, because he's made it a very, very personal book for me, and it's made it look and feel wonderful. So I couldn't be happier.
So right now you're sitting in your little studio. How many hours a day would you spend locked in your little box?
Oh, far too many. People complain about isolation, but I'm quite used to it. I've been isolated for years, self-isolating, because by the very nature of what I do, I mean, I have to be in a soundproof, isolated room. Yeah. And so this is what I call my bunker. This is my command and control center, where everything comes from, including X Factor and all the big shows I've done. Were done on these microphones that you can see around me, or you can just see one at the moment, but there's many. So I spend most of my day in here between, I'd say, 8:30 in the morning till sometimes 7, 8 o'clock at night. So It can be 12-hour days. Not all in here, of course. I have breaks, but yeah, this is where I spend a lot of my time. And when I'm not here, I'm in London working in the bigger studios. Not at the moment, obviously, with the way things are, but in normal times, I'd be up in London maybe 3 days a week for an afternoon or morning sessions in London. So yeah, you're right. I spend most of my time in a padded cell where they can't hear me scream.
So let's take you back to the start of your career. It all started here in Belfast, didn't it?
It did indeed, Robin. I did indeed start on BBC Northern Ireland at Radio Ulster, where I first started my career. In fact, I started my love of radio. Actually doing it in hospital radio at the Royal Victoria Hospital. And then from there, I went to Queen's University, did a degree. And when I was at Queen's doing my degree, I got involved in the Film Society. A guy there was a BBC cameraman, was helping us out. Long story short, I actually got my foot in the door at BBC, reading the news, actually reading the fat stock prices on Radio Ulster. And it seemed so glamorous back then to read the fat stock prices. Who knew that the price of hoggets and steers could be so fascinating? And I thought I'd made it. I walked down Royal Avenue after that very first broadcast at 7:30 in the morning. It would have been probably a broadcast that only, ruddy-cheeked, fat-fingered farmers in Tyrone were listening to. But nonetheless, I was on the air, and I felt like I'd made it. And little did I know that I'd only just begun. And little did I know then where my career would take me either. It's been an extraordinary 43 years.
Now, you also became the youngest ever newsreader at the age of 17, didn't you?
I know. I think I still hold the record. I bluffed my way into the BBC. As I said, this whole process started my introduction to the BBC just as I was about to go to university. So I was still in school, barely out of short trousers. And I applied, and I got an interview, much to my amazement. And the guy that interviewed me, a guy called Michael Bagley, who was the head of the radio presentation, or in fact, the whole presentation department at the BBC, asked me what I did, and I lied. I said I'm a student. He didn't know what age I was. These were the days before human resources departments would check these things out. So he gave me a job, doing I think it was the first job I did was reading as I say, the fat stock prices and reading the news at close down, because the BBC closed down in those days. Can you imagine? And I did a lot of that stuff. So that was fantastic. During university, it paid for my university education. My parents didn't have to pay for anything, and I supported myself and have done ever since. But 17 years old. What a brass neck to walk in through the doors of Broadcasting House and demand a job. What a neck.
And of course, it must have been fairly tough in those days as well. This would have been during the dark days of the Troubles here, wouldn't it?
It was, and I love the way that the Troubles are just sort of described as the Troubles. It sounds so kind of fluffy and anodyne, but in fact, you're right, Robin. It was probably, this would have been, let me think, the late 70s, early 80s, and all through the 80s, actually, because I left Belfast in 82 to go to London. But yeah, during the early 80s, it was a dark period, a very dark period. And I'd also flirted with journalism during that time. I was a very bad journalist, probably the world's worst journalist ever. But I was surrounded by these wonderful reporters, like they were starting out on their careers. People like Nick Witchell and Kate Adie and Jeremy Paxman all came through the BBC Belfast newsroom because it was the focus of attention for much of the world's media at that time. And so, I should have and could have learnt from the best, or who would turn out to be the best. They were no doubt stars in the making. But journalism wasn't for me. I couldn't sniff out a story to save my life. And I decided that I would, my future lay in voice work, in voiceovers, and in radio presentation and being a DJ, perhaps. I didn't know what I was going to do.
And you also actually broke the news about the murder of Lord Mountbatten, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I was on duty that day in the BBC newsroom, and the news came in on the Press Association wires that there'd been an explosion down in the Republic, and the initial report was that Lord Mountbatten had been injured. We delayed the reporting of the story because it's still is. There were global shockwaves from that event. Here was the Queen's cousin, I think he is, the Viceroy of India, previous Viceroy of India, massively important figure in all respects, seemingly had lost his life. But we waited and waited until we had confirmation from the Garda, and that confirmation came through. Sadly, it was the case that he had indeed been killed, and we were straight to air with it. It was a day I'll never forget, and of course that was also the day when there was another tragedy down in just near the border as well, with the parachute regiment losing 16 soldiers that day. So it was a dark day, and I think those two incidents, and many more, where I'd interviewed just too many widows, policemen's widows, and I just thought this wasn't the career for me. I just threw in the towel and thought, no, I can't do this anymore.
So then you went to London, and I always remember you being involved with Steve Wright at the time on Radio 1.
Yes, that was a really fun time for me. The BBC is a great institution, and there used to be a canteen on the top floor, on the 7th floor of Broadcasting House in London, where everybody would simply congregate at lunchtime, and you'd end up in a lunch queue next to Robin Day or Esther Ranson. And one day I ended up next to Steve Wright, and we got chatting as our trays were moving along the canteen queue, and I joined him for lunch, and we got on like a supermarket on fire. And so I was so delighted to meet him, because I'd always admired him from afar. Anyway, that afternoon meeting, that lunch meeting, ended with us agreeing, God knows how, but I said, well, I'd love to do some character voices on your show. I'd never done a character voice in my life, but we ended up creating this character, and I did it on his radio show for many years, and that then led to other character voices on his show, and phone-in characters, and I slowly realized that I had a passion for this kind of work, and I enjoyed it. So, and then I thought maybe I could make a career out of doing this, being a voice actor rather than just a DJ or a newsreader. I could do other things, and that's how it started.
So then television came along, and before the X Factor, you did TV game shows like Family Fortunes, and even The Price is Right with Bruce Forsyth, didn't you?
I did. That was one of the most fun shows to work on, actually, because working up close with a showbiz legend like Brucey was just a treat, a real one-off opportunity, which I was so pleased to have been able to have had. And watching him work was a real lesson. I know I've never met anybody before or since who could literally walk onto a studio floor in front of a live audience and have them eating out of his hand within about 2 seconds. He just knew audiences, he knew people, he knew what they wanted. He was a great sense of timing. And I remember watching him many times in the wings in the studio, in the darkness, in the Stygian gloom backstage, just before he walked out into the bright spotlight. And he would stand there, rocking backwards and forwards on his finely polished patent leather shoes, and he would be listening with his head slightly cocked forward and backwards, and listening to the audience, and sort of sizing them up like they were his rightful prey, you know, and. He would just go into this zone where he would just listen and think and listen and think. And then as soon as his name was called out or he's introduced onto the floor, he would just come out, give a little skip and come out with his palms wide open like that. And the eyes were darting about and twinkling, and he had that smile. And the audience they relaxed. They knew they were in the hands of someone who was going to entertain them. They didn't have to worry about anything. He just took them over and took them with him. He was extraordinary to watch. And that show was great too, because of the huge pantomime like fairground style sets and prizes. I remember I used to pray for the end of the show in fact we all used to pray for like someone who really was so inappropriate to win all this stuff, because they'd win some really amazing prizes. And one time it did happen. This little old lady who lives on the 17th floor of a tower block in Leeds, she won, a huge speedboat, a sauna, a 7-berth caravan, 50 grand in cash, a car. It was just amazing. And her face was a picture. I loved that show.
Let's talk about X Factor. Was it Simon Cowell that chose you as the voice of the X Factor?
I don't know. I don't think so. He probably would have had a hand in it. I auditioned with a lot of other people, I guess. I saw the pilot show because the guy that told me about it was this sound engineer on a show I'd done with Philip Schofield and Anne Robinson called Test the Nation for the BBC. And he said they're having trouble finding somebody who can do the voice for this new show. It's got the working title, The X Factor. Nobody had ever heard of it. And I said, well, I'll have a look at the pilot. He sent me a copy of the pilot show. And as soon as I saw that, I knew I was the guy that was going to make a difference. I knew I could do it because I knew it was it needed something big. And so I sent in my audition, and a few days later I got the call that I got the gig. So that was, again, something that was an amazing show to be involved in. Yes, it became a behemoth. It went global. It was the biggest show on TV with at its peak was attracting 18-20 million people watching it. Extraordinary.
So what about your voice? Do you do regular exercises to keep the voice sounding so good?
Yes. I mean, I think the only thing people say to me, how do you look after your voice? I think the thing that I've found that works best is just hydration. If you drink enough water, that is the oil in your vocal engine. It goes into your system. It gets to your vocal cords eventually, and it keeps them nice and plump. If you become dehydrated, those vocal folds can, not to get too technical about it, but they can deflate and it can become dry and raspy, and that's where you get vocal problems. Things called vocal nodes can form, and that's pretty painful. And the only way you can get rid of those is by surgery, and that means obviously you're going to be out of work for many months. So keeping hydrated is good, and keeping your before you work, warming up your voice is important. Not only the vocal folds but the muscles of articulation, the tongue, the lips, the jaw, etc. Making sure those muscles are working so your diction is good. And so there's not a lot else you can do. I mean, I wish I could say I have this magic potion that I found in the Amazonian rainforest, but I haven't got anything like that.
And do you have your voice insured?
I do, yeah, because it's the only thing that stands between me and complete abject poverty, I'm afraid. It's one of those things that when you think about it, it's quite terrifying. And these two small folds of mucous membrane are the only things that keep me and my family from the breadline. And so I am, I do insure it for quite a lot. And touch wood, I've never had to call on it, but it's nice to know it's there. I'm virtually unemployable in any other capacity.
Now, what about plans for Christmas this year? Is it going to be a nice family Christmas?
No, it's not going to be a nice family Christmas. Normally, I go to Belfast. I come over to Belfast. I've got family over there, and we visit them, stay with them. And my sister lives there, my wife's mother and her family and her brother. But this year, no, for obvious reasons, we're staying put here in London, and we're going to have to, just stay here. My son lives over here, so he's going to join us, and that's about it. I'm actually quite looking forward to staying at home for a change. Yeah. It'll make a change from travelling at this time of year. It can be quite difficult, particularly when there's snow on the ground and it's cold. But we'll keep in touch on Zoom like everybody else.
So Peter, it's been great talking to you. The book Voiceover Man is out now. Where can we get our hands on it?
You can order it anywhere you like. I mean, if you want to go on Amazon, it's on there right now. All formats. We've got the audiobook. I read the audiobook, by the way, which was interesting. It's available on Kindle, paperback and hardback on the Amazon bookstore. Waterstones have it. It's everywhere. You can get it anywhere. Anywhere you can buy any books, you'll find it there.
Great. Well, Peter, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, Robin. It's been a great pleasure, and happy Christmas to you and all your viewers.
So that's all we have time for on The Big Show this evening. That's all we have time for on The Big Show this year. To play us out, something nice and Christmassy, recorded at St Peter's Cathedral in Belfast, a brand new Christmas song by John Emmanuel. It's called The Beautiful Innocent Child. Have yourselves a very Merry Christmas and the very best of wishes for 2021. See you next year. Bye-bye.
Christmas Eve lay shepherds in a field when the light of a star filled the sky. Then an angel appeared who said, "Don't be afraid, for I bring you great tidings of joy." And the angel did say, "In the city today, the Messiah, the King, has been born. And the sign you shall see will set all men free. Find the child wrapped in swaddling clothes, singing glory to God, for salvation has come, and peace to all men of good will. How great is our God, for he comes to us all as a beautiful innocent child, as a beautiful innocent child. As they walk through the night in the glorious light, they arrived at the place where he lay. And oh, what a joy as they bowed and adored the Christ child asleep on the hay, singing glory to God, for salvation has come, and peace to all men of good will. How great is our God, for he comes to us all as a beautiful innocent child, singing glory to God, for salvation has come, peace to all men of good will.
Some stays stay with you forever. Gift an experience to remember with a Hastings Hotels gift card. Buy online at hastingshotels.com.